She helped a lost man, then saw his face on every screen in the city. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves. They don't arrive with fanfare or warning. They slip in quietly, the way early morning light slips under a curtain. Soft, unassuming, and impossible to ignore once you've noticed it. Carolyn Merritt was 53 years old, and she had lived long enough to know that the world didn't stop for anybody's grief. It kept moving. The subway kept running. The city kept breathing. And people kept walking past each other like strangers, which, more often than not, they were. But that Tuesday evening in October, the kind of evening where the air smells like rain that hasn't fallen yet, Carolyn's world stopped. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way anyone around her would have noticed. It stopped the way a heart skips a beat. Just for a second. Just long enough to matter. She had worked a long shift at the hospital that day. Not as a doctor. Carolyn was a patient intake coordinator, which meant she was the first face people saw when they were scared. She had done that job for 21 years, and she was good at it because she understood something most people didn't learn until much later in life. That sometimes, what a frightened person needs most isn't information. It's just a steady voice telling them they're going to be okay. Her shoes hurt. Her lower back ached in the particular way it always did by a Tuesday. She had a half-eaten granola bar in her bag, a grocery list she hadn't finished, and a quiet, empty apartment waiting for her 3 subway stops away. Her daughter, Sophie, had moved to Portland 2 years ago. Her ex-husband, Ray, had remarried. And her mother, well, her mother had passed the previous spring, and Carolyn was still learning how to carry that weight without letting it bend her completely. So she was tired. Not just the tired that comes from work. The deeper kind. The kind that settles into your bones after years of showing up, keeping it together, and not always having someone waiting at home to ask how your day went. She descended the subway stairs at 42nd Street, her tote bag over one shoulder, her sensible shoes clicking against the tile. The platform was busy the way New York platforms always are, a blur of coats and earbuds and people staring at their phones, all of them moving in the practiced choreography of city life. That's when she saw him. He was sitting on the ground near the far wall, leaning against the yellow tile like something had simply knocked him there and left him. A man in a dark suit, mid-40s, maybe, with dark hair and a face that, even through the blood and the dazed expression, you could tell had once been confident. Composed. The kind of face that belonged behind a desk or at the head of a table somewhere. Not on a subway floor. He was bleeding from a cut above his cheekbone. Not badly, not emergency badly, but enough that a thin red line had traced its way down the side of his jaw. His shirt was torn at the collar. His eyes were open, but they had that hollow, faraway look of a man who had either just received terrible news or just survived something he hadn't expected to survive. People walked past him. Dozens of them. Some glanced. Most didn't. Carolyn stopped. She didn't make a big production of it. She just stopped. The way you stop when something in your gut says, this is where you're supposed to be right now. She crouched down beside him and said, in that calm, even voice she'd spent 21 years perfecting, "Hey. You doing okay, hun?" He looked at her like he'd forgotten people could speak directly to him. He started. His voice was rough, like it hadn't been used in a while. "I think I just need a minute." "Take your time," she said. "I've got nowhere to be that can't wait." That wasn't entirely true, but it was true enough. His name was Daniel Hale. She learned that in pieces, the way you learn things about people when they're not quite ready to tell you everything at once. She found a small packet of tissues in her bag. She always kept them, force of habit from years at the hospital intake desk, and she pressed one gently to the cut on his face. He winced but didn't pull away. "You got somebody I can call?" she asked. He shook his head, slowly. "Not right now." She didn't push. She just sat down beside him on that subway floor, her tote bag in her lap, and waited. Around them, the city hummed and rattled. A train came and went. A little boy across the platform stared at them curiously until his mother tugged him along. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead the way they always do, that particular institutional hum that Carolyn had come to associate with waiting rooms and difficult moments. "You work in medicine?" Daniel asked after a while, nodding at the way she'd handled the tissue. "Close enough," she said. "Hospital. I'm the lady who takes your insurance card and tells you the doctor will be right with you, even when the doctor won't be right with you for another 45 minutes. He almost smiled at that. "Almost. Carolyn," she said, and offered her hand. Daniel. He shook it. His grip was firm, even now. The grip of a man who had spent years trying to project capability. "You want to tell me what happened, Daniel?" "You don't have to, but sometimes it helps to say it out loud to somebody who doesn't know you." He was quiet for a long moment. "I had a meeting today," he finally said. "An important one. I've been building something, a company. Small tech firm, nothing fancy. We had investors lined up. Had been working toward it for 3 years. He paused. "They walked. All of them. Said the market had shifted. Said the timing wasn't right." Another pause. "Said a lot of things that basically meant no." "I'm sorry," Carolyn said. And she meant it the way she always meant it, simply, without decoration. "I walked out of the building and I don't even remember the last 2 hours. I think I fell. On the stairs somewhere." He touched his cheek absently. "I've put everything into this. Savings. Time. My marriage didn't survive it. My kids are in Chicago with their mother and I talk to them on Sundays and," he stopped himself. Drew a breath. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear all this." "I asked," Carolyn said quietly. "I wouldn't have asked if I didn't mean it." He looked at her then. Really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. The kind of shift that happens when a person realizes, against all expectation, that they are not entirely alone. They sat there for nearly an hour. She told him a little about her own life. About Sophie in Portland. About her mother, and how the last year had felt like learning to walk with one shoe. About the particular loneliness of being a person who spent their days comforting strangers and then went home to a quiet apartment and reheated soup. "I reckon none of us have it as figured out as we look," she said. He laughed softly at that. A real laugh, small and worn at the edges, but real. "No," he agreed, "I don't think we do." When he finally felt steady enough to stand, she stood with him. She made sure he could walk straight, checked his eyes the way she'd seen nurses do, not because she had medical training, but because 21 years near a hospital teaches you things by proximity. He seemed okay. Shaken. Gutted. But okay. "You going to be all right getting home?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. And then, quieter, "Thank you, Carolyn. I mean that. Hang in there, Daniel," she said. "I know that sounds like a small thing to say. But I mean it is a big thing." He nodded. He looked like he was holding something back. Not tears, exactly, but the thing that lives just underneath tears. The weight of everything you've been carrying that you haven't let yourself put down yet. They went their separate ways on the platform. Two strangers. An ordinary Tuesday in October. Or so Carolyn thought. 3 weeks later, she was walking through Penn Station on her lunch break, heading to pick up a sandwich from the little deli she liked near 34th Street, when she stopped dead in the middle of the concourse. There was a screen above the newsstand. One of those big digital displays that cycles through headlines. And on it, in crisp, unmistakable clarity, was Daniel's face. Not a police report, not something terrible, a news headline, clean and bright and almost hard to believe. Tech entrepreneur Daniel Hale secures record funding after viral story of resilience inspires new investor group. She stood there with her tote bag and her sensible shoes and her half-finished grocery list, and she read the ticker beneath his photo. Apparently, after losing his investors, Daniel had written something. A letter, or a post. She couldn't quite make it out from where she stood. About failure and the cost of trying and the unexpected kindness of a stranger on a subway platform. He hadn't used her name. But she knew. He had written about a woman who sat down on a dirty subway floor and didn't ask for anything in return. About what it meant, when you've lost everything you built, to have a stranger look at you like you're still worth something. The story had moved people. And those people had moved other people. And somehow, in the way things occasionally do in this complicated, unpredictable world, something good had come out of a man sitting on a tile floor with blood on his face and a woman with sore shoes deciding not to walk past. Carolyn stood in Penn Station for a long moment, the crowds moving around her, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a while. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter than pride. Something closer to the feeling you get when you realize that the small, ordinary choices you make, the ones that don't feel like choices at all, just instinct, just decency, those choices ripple outward in ways you'll never fully see. She thought about her mother, who had always said, "Do good quietly, and let it find its own voice." She thought she understood that better now. She didn't try to reach out to Daniel. That wasn't the point. The point wasn't connection or recognition or a heartwarming reunion. The point was simpler than that, and truer. The point was that on a Tuesday in October, when the air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet, two tired people had sat on a subway floor and reminded each other that they weren't invisible. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Carolyn still takes the same subway home most nights. She still has sore feet by Tuesday. She still has an apartment that's a little too quiet, and a grocery list that's never quite finished, and a daughter in Portland she calls every Sunday. But she pays attention now, in a way she thinks maybe she always did, she's just more aware of it. She notices the person sitting a little too still on a bench. The man staring at his phone with eyes that aren't really reading anything. The woman standing at the edge of the platform who looks like she's holding something too heavy to carry alone. She doesn't always stop. She's human. She's tired. She has her own weight. But sometimes she does. And she knows, the way you know things you've earned through years of living, that sometimes stopping is the whole job. No fanfare. No announcement. Just a steady voice and a tissue from the bottom of a tote bag. Just someone saying, "I see you. Take your time. I've got nowhere to be that can't wait." That's the story she'd tell you, if you asked her. Sitting on her couch on a quiet evening, maybe with a cup of tea cooling on the side table, the city lights visible through the window. She'd say it the way her mother used to say things, slow, and sure, and without any wasted words. Do good quietly, folks. You never know which Tuesday might be somebody's turning point. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you of someone in your life, or a moment when a stranger's kindness made all the difference, I'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment below and share your story. And if you know somebody who could use a reminder today that small acts of kindness still matter, please pass this along to them. It costs nothing to share something good. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourselves and each other.